The French Revolution was an event in France that lasted 11 years, from 1789 to 1799. The revolution was a big deal for the French people because it was a time where they destroyed and then redesigned the political landscape of France. In doing so, they managed to rid the country of the absolute monarchy and feudal system that was ruled by like 400 different King Louis for almost 1,000 years, and they gained freedom and rights for the future generations. King Louis XVI started adding taxes to many human needs and necessities, which enraged the French, so they started to starve and lose a lot of income due to the raise in taxes. During this time, the French government was helping to fund the American Revolution, which put them into a lot of debt, hence the taxes being so hefty. The feudal system split France up into 3 different estates, the first estate being the clergy with the priests and such, who owned most of the land, the second estate being the royal family / nobility, being the king, queen, knights, and so on. They owned around 20% of the land. The last estate was everyone else, holding 96% of the population and being the biggest group, having the least amount of rights. The queen at the time was a lady named Marie Antoinette, a princess from Austria who would marry the king. At the time, Austria and France were having some wars, so people were a bit skeptical of her loyalty to the country. The queen was rumored to spend a lot of the country's money on her own well-being, and the king was accused of the same thing, while the third estate was basically left to rot and fend for themselves whilst trying to pay their taxes. This began to people off. With the country being very poor through funding to other countries and the raise in taxes, the people of France began to realize the severity of their problem. Riots began to arise due to lack of food and the unfair treatment from the monarchy. The king decided to call the Estates General, which was basically one person from each estate that had a single vote for all of the estate. The third estate wanted to vote for more fair treatment and less taxes, but the first 2 estates did the opposite. Third estate members, apart from the bourgeoisie, were determined to create fair and equal treatment for all men, thus the creation of the National Assembly. The National Assembly created the Tennis Court Oath, which was literally on a tennis court. They pledged to stay together until a new and fair government was formed. In 1789, the Third Estate decided to storm the Bastille, a large fortress-like prison. They believed that this would show the king how little he actually controlled all of the people, which worked pretty well. It was labeled as the first major event against King Louis XVI. People heard of the news and decided to join in and go against the king. King Louis then decided to try and flee, but on October 5th to 6th, 1789, the working class of women started to march. They headed to Versailles, where the king had fled. They were able to capture the king and his family and imprison them back in Paris. In June of 1791, the king and his family were able to escape again and tried to go to Austria this time for some help, which did not work. The king was charged with treason, which was kind of a death sentence. He was executed on January 21st, 1793, and the Marie Antoinette was beheaded 9 months later. Their son then died in prison, and their daughter was freed to Austria. Then, from September 1793 to June 1794, the Reign of Terror began and was led by Maximilien Robespierre. It was a very gruesome time for the French. If you ever disobeyed or went against the revolutionaries, you were basically executed or imprisoned on the spot. Around 300,000 people were arrested and about 17,000 were publicly executed, and an unknown number died in prison. Later on, the French people ganged up on Maxi Boy and beheaded him too. During the same time, the National Convention was arising, and their goal was to basically make France a half-decent place to live. They helped abolish the absolute monarchy and became France's government, and the first based on male suffrage, which allowed for men 25 years and older to vote for representatives. France was then able to become the country it is now, not all evil and such. They even had their own Declaration of Independence. Kinda. It was called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which allowed for people to have rights and freedoms. Sadly, it was created before the Reign of Terror, which is when it was very rarely used, but they use it now, and that's the story of France. Pretty much.